Ever imagine a world where insects weren't just little bugs, but like giant rulers of the planet?
Yeah. We're talking dragonflies with wingspans like hawks and millipedes stretching longer than a car.
Seriously, it's mind-blowing. And today, we're going to deep dive into this crazy period in Earth's history, the age of giant insects.
Exactly.
Our guide is an article called The Age of Giant Insects, A Tale of Oxygen and Evolution.
Right. A tale of oxygen and evolution.
It's packed with fascinating insights, and I'm excited to unpack it all with you today.
Absolutely.
So first off, these giant insects weren't just some random fluke.
No, not at all. They were like totally connected to the Earth's environment millions of years ago, especially during the Carboniferous and Permian periods.
Okay, so those periods, those were the times to be a giant insect. Got it.
You got it.
So the article mentions oxygen levels back then were seriously high, something like 35%, way more than the 21% we have today. So how did all that extra oxygen make bugs grow so massive?
Well, insects breathe through a network of teeny tiny tubes called trachea, and these tubes deliver oxygen straight to their tissues.
Right.
So with more oxygen in the atmosphere, these trachea could work much more efficiently, even in a much bigger body.
Oh, I see. So it's like having a supercharged respiratory system for insects, basically.
Exactly.
But hold on, wouldn't there be some drawbacks to being so huge? I mean, think about a giant insect trying to squeeze through a small space.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about molting, shedding their exoskeletons. They'd be super vulnerable during that.
True, very true.
And imagine the amount of food they'd have to eat to fuel those giant bodies.
That's a great point. I hadn't even thought about the challenges. But then again, the article also mentions that back then, the skies were pretty much empty. No birds, no bats, like free real estate up there.
Exactly. No aerial predators, which means insects could just evolve into these huge forms without any threats from above.
Wow, I can just picture these massive insects ruling the skies.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
So let's talk about some of these awesome creatures. The article mentions Meganura, a dragonfly with, get this, a wingspan of up to 28 inches. That's like almost the length of a baseball bat, right?
Yeah, it was massive. And not just big, but a fierce predator, too.
Oh, yeah, Meganura was at the top of the food chain. It wasn't messing around.
Absolutely. It was an apex predator, preying on other insects and even small vertebrates, animals with backbones, like early amphibians.
Wow, a dragonfly hunting down amphibians. Okay, let's shift gears from the skies to the forest floor. There we find Arthropleura, a millipede that could reach, wait for it, 8 feet in length.
It's hard to even imagine.
I know, right? It's
Yeah.
longer than a king-size bed.
Yeah, can you imagine this massive creature crawling through the undergrowth?
It's wild. But before we get too scared, Arthropleura was actually an herbivore.
That's right, most likely munching on decaying plants.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. But size wasn't just for millipedes. Arthropleura wasn't the only giant on land. Imagine coming across Pulmonoscorpius, a scorpion as big as a house cat.
Oh, yeah, and with a venomous sting, too, just like modern scorpions.
Oh, I bet that sting packed a punch.
It did. It was a formidable predator. It's fascinating how certain features like the venomous sting have stuck around in scorpions for millions of years.
It really shows you the power of evolution. But here's the million-dollar question. If conditions were so perfect for these giant insects, why'd they disappear?
Well, over a very long time, Earth's climate changed. Oxygen levels dropped.
Right.
And eventually, those aerial predators we talked about, the birds and bats, they finally evolved.
Oh, so new competition entered the scene.
Exactly. New competition, new predation pressure. It wasn't a sudden extinction, but a gradual shift in the balance of power.
So basically, a whole bunch of factors ganged up on those giant insects and led to their downfall. It's kind of sad, but I guess that's how nature works.
Yeah, it really shows how interconnected everything is on Earth. Environmental changes, new species evolving, competition for resources, it all played a part in the decline of giant insects.
It makes you think, what if those giant insects hadn't died out? What would our world look like today?
That's a wild thought, isn't it? Would we have evolved differently with these massive insects in our ecosystems?
Yeah, would we be running around trying to avoid giant mosquitoes?
Who knows? Maybe we'd have giant insect farms instead of cattle ranches.
Okay, that's a little freaky. But seriously, this deep dive has been incredible. It's amazing to think about the history of life on Earth and how evolution and the environment are constantly shaping each other.
Absolutely. And it shows how much we can learn from the past, not just about ancient creatures, but also about our planet and the forces that shape life as we know it.
Well said. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up our deep dive into the age of giant insects. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.